Okay, so we have the recording going. And let's get this slide deck up. Okay, so some of these have some little dorky, things on them, but hopefully we'll all be able to read through them. Okay, so there's just two sections here. There's an explain, and then there is guiding principles, basically. Okay, so ethics. What do you think of when it comes to mind? Do you think of people saying what you should do? Do you think of obeying the law? Morals. Yep. So it's more than just basic listening to authority. It's more than what's quote unquote legal, because as we all know, working in the IT industry, laws usually lag behind technology. So we especially have to be up on what's ethical. So being ethical means doing what's right, no matter what, even when it doesn't benefit us. Or in my case, I would say, especially when it doesn't benefit us. Michael, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, would you consider Edward Snowden ethical?
It depends. See, on that one, I have a hard time because I don't think that whistleblowers are necessarily unethical. I think that the way he did it was probably not particularly ethical, but the information that he exposed and the practices that were happening, those were definitely unethical and needed to be shared. I think it could have been possibly done in a better manner, but yeah, right idea, wrong execution. Yes.
Not to mention everything that followed after it.
Yeah, and it was just kind of a pile on. Everything just kind of went wrong, and that one's one of those interesting ethical cases too. Yeah.
My main thing is if you're gonna blow a whistle, don't cry about what happens to you afterwards. Expect that, especially when you're blowing the whistle on Big Brother, that you're going to get the shaft.
Yeah, and a lot of times with military and the big letter agencies, it's not going to be pretty, even if you're right. So a lot of the times, yeah, as Mike says, there are better ways to blow the whistle, and there are, after Snowden, they have put a lot of practices in to make more legal ways to blow the whistle in, because I think he put a lot of people in danger by what he did. So I don't see that as particularly ethical, but good point. So ethics, as we were talking about, this is just basic principles that govern behavior. Some people have different views on what ethics mean. What ethical principle means: it's following your beliefs. Don't change when you're in a new situation. Follow the same ethical principles at school, home, and work, and ethical principles can guide you through dilemmas with your friends, teachers, and coworkers. Now, one thing to think about is each professional organization, especially in cybersecurity or in somewhere where you have to have a security clearance, almost all of them, in fact, all of them that I've seen, have what they consider an ethical principles section. So make sure that you know what they consider ethical behavior, because that's something when you're getting into your professional organizations, and as we go down, when we talk about what happens if you don't have ethics, when you're getting into those professional organizations, you really do need to look at that. So ethics can feel initially restrictive to have the basic set of principles for decisions, but knowing ethical principles can actually help with your decision-making process. it helps, especially if someone tries to back you into a corner. And a lot of times there are situations, especially in cybersecurity, where you might get someone that gets a little overzealous, or you might get someone that doesn't necessarily want to report something, and you can say, no, I'm sorry, this is where this comes in, and say, no, that's not okay, we can't do that. So when you have a set of rules to guide your behavior, you have kind of a in-place game plan when you have tough decisions. Why do you need ethics? You solve problems and deal with complex situations every day, but not every issue you encounter is ethical. So some decisions are not ethical in nature, like what are you going to eat for lunch? What class you want to study for tonight? Well, that one, I guess, can be sometimes, but they aren't technically ethical issues. They're just decisions. How to decide if a decision is an ethical situation that can be solved using ethical principles. When it's an ethical situation, you're deciding whether something is right or wrong. Ethical situations can result in harm to someone or something if you pick the wrong choice. Not necessarily a life or death situation, but a wrong action could cause someone or something to be hurt. I.e., no one will be harmed if you decide to have a burger or pizza, but neither of those is a right or wrong decision. So what about taking money that just fell out of someone's pocket? Considering taking the day off work, even though you've been scheduled. So what do you think about the money that fell out of someone's pocket?
Depends on how
Depends.
much it is.
Well,
Pretty unethical, if you ask me.
they are talking about it in black and white here, but and there are
Well,
always
like-
gray areas. I personally return it if I can see the person and I saw it fall out of their pocket. I'm like, here, you dropped something. But if you find just random money on the ground, depending on the monetary donation, if it's like a quarter, if it's like a $20 bill, I usually look around to see, hey, did someone drop this? Because you never know. Am I on a camera? That's another thing.
I found money in
I
the
had a-
ATM. Oh, no, you go ahead.
I had a colonel. I was coming out after getting my dress blues updated with new rank and stuff, and a colonel was walking out with his stuff in his dress bag and everything, and trying to like fumble with and put his hat on and everything, and he dropped his wallet, and I saluted, and he got really pissy that I saluted. Which, granted, he had a free hand, but and then so I picked up his wallet. And I turned around and, hey, sir, here's your wallet. And he immediately like opens it up and checks to make sure that I didn't take anything out of it because I was a lowly enlisted, and then just sits there, good job, soldier, and then walks off. And I was just like, I should have just walked off with this wallet and thrown it in the trash.
Yeah, when you have something like that happen, it doesn't feel particularly good, does it? No, but that if you hadn't told him about it, you would have gotten in trouble, right? Yeah. I hate it when stuff like that happens and you're like kind of punished for doing the right thing. But
Correction,
sometimes it's
picked it
like, well,
up.
what would have happened if I hadn't done the right thing, Yeah.
If I picked it up, and because there's cameras, but if I just glance at it and keep walking, they can't prove that I noticed the wallet was there.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Now what about what if you consider taking the day off even though you've been scheduled? Now, that one, I think personally, because I have some like physical ailments that I've had to deal with over the years, it really depends on a bunch of factors. That's not a black and white one. That's what's your position? How is that going to affect the rest of the team you work with? So some of these are not black and white, even though a lot of people, when they talk about ethics, job a lot. That's the problem with American corporations too. They have a tendency to be like, no, you're coming to work if you're dead. So that's one of those. Maybe I should take care of myself first. So that's kind of one of those. Is it ethical to trash my health versus take care of their underlying money making abilities. So you never know. So sometimes there is a right and wrong thing. If you take the money, they won't have money they may have been depending on for lunch. If you don't show up for work, your boss and coworkers will have to cover for you. Like I said, it just depends on the situation. I think having situational awareness makes a big difference in figuring out whether or not something is ethical. So to reframe that, how would you feel if you had a $100 bill in your pocket and dropped it?
Sad.
Yeah, everyone's bad. It would be terrible. How would you feel
I'd
if
be
your
kicking myself
coworker-
for not putting it in a wallet.
Right? Yeah. I have dropped money before, or I put it through a washing machine or various other things, and you learn the lesson the hard way. I don't blame the person if they're out there and they find it and they don't turn it in. I'm just like, well, I was dumb. But you know, there are some people. How would you feel if you left your coworker hanging and went fishing? Now, see, that's one of those that depends on what you're going to do. If you're sick versus I want to go take a fishing day, that's different, right? That's that situational thing.
Yeah, at the company I work for, I guess that we've actually had people quit on the spot, and it's never a good feeling when you have to pick up after them.
Yeah. Yeah, and my dad does building maintenance and stuff for the veterans, the rest home here, and they've had a difficult time because people get the job up there and they go, oh wow, this is hard, and then they just quit.
That's the worst one.
Yeah.
Too
So
hard.
the supervisors or the other people end up having to take over, and it's like, oh really? Yeah. Amazon, yeah. Now, see, Amazon is a whole, that's an interesting one because I've talked to some people. Sorry. Problem with being in the living room, I have some more kitty friends. Amazon notoriously treats its workers not well, depending on where you are in their warehouses and all sorts of things. So that's one of those ethical, do I take care of myself or do I let them, walk over the top of me? Sorry, did you say something? Yeah.
She had a friend who was a programmer. She actually did some of the programming for the Kindle Fires. And this was like probably close to 10 years ago. And she told me nothing but horror stories about it. Basically, people getting unfairly like actually evaluated. The people who did her performance review weren't even in her department. And they intentionally bumped her performance review just so they could give their own guys a better performance review.
I can absolutely believe that. I had a nephew that was just working, starting up in the warehouse, and he had a learning disability. He told them about it. And they basically just, once they figured out he had that learning disability, instead of, straightforward doing things, they kind of worked around his back and made it impossible for him to work there. And I was like, wow, this is really shady, some of the stuff that they do. And so, yeah, unless you're higher up, it sounds like it is a terrible spot to work in.
And I don't know if any of you guys heard, but I guess Amazon made the news recently. I'll just say that. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
For some similar stuff we're talking about.
Yeah,
we'll have to go out and look at the news then. Thanks for the heads up on that. So ethical situations, they don't just deal with any choices, they deal with right and wrong choices. Yeah, there's this is just an example of, oh, sorry. Basically, it was what happens if you find the answer sheet to a test that's online and that you're supposed to be taking. If you find the answer sheet, do you do anything about it? Or do you go use the answers and take the test. Well,
I would say for that one,
Oh,
probably notify the instructor, but I mean, me personally, I wouldn't use it on the test, but I'd definitely use it for the study guide. Uh,
well, you know that as soon
like-
as the instructor knows it's out there, it's going to invalidate the test.
Well, yes, but 9 times out of 10, they're gonna pull questions that are similar to that, is what I mean. Like, so I'd be using that to sit there and be like, all right, so this is the type of question they're going to be
Mhm.
asking, stuff like that, and make sure I'm hitting those sections especially.
As an instructor, I would probably say, um, if you ever find out something like that and you turn it into your instructor, you generally will get kudos from your instructor for doing something like that. In fact, I've run into situations on the student side, and I've seen instructors actually give extra credit for the honesty of the students, saying, because academic honesty is a huge thing, so doing that can also give you a little bump in your grade sometimes, just for saying, hey, you guys know this is out there. And a lot of teachers, when it's out there, they don't have a problem with you, like, for example, using it as a study guide, because they assume that if you're the one that told them about it, that probably several other students have seen it and it's already out there. So they just take it off from where it already is and assume that everyone's already seen it.
should really know the material too already.
Yeah. So ethics, generally a lot of people talk about core values and ethics together. So they're basic principles for governing your behavior. Don't change when you're in a new situation. And they're at, your school, your home, your work, they're all the same. There's a lot of repetition in these slides, sorry. Involve deciding whether something is right or wrong. Someone or something could be harmed. Now, when you're thinking about the something that could be harmed, think about company reputations as well as personal reputations. Those are the some things that can be harmed as well. Okay, so remember me mentioning consequences of unethical behavior. Being unethical can lead to consequences like lost trust, legal problems, poor reputation. Now, I will say in cybersecurity and anything where you're going to possibly be doing any sort of testifying on stand, reputation is something that you have to have when you do expert testimony. I spent 7 years with the state police as a forensic evidence specialist, and part of my job was I had to be responsible for the chain of custody. And so if I was called in for expert testimony, I had to basically tell them step by step how the evidence came into the laboratory, went out, anything that I touched, and give them the runaround on how the process worked. But I also taught the officers how to make it through a court case from start to finish and packaging their evidence so that they didn't have any problems. And through that and through my testimony, I've developed a reputation for being fair and for answering a lot of questions. And you build on that, the more activities that you have, the more interactions that you have with people, and especially in legal or in cybersecurity, because you have a lot of crossover with laws and things like that. Even in the basic things with cybersecurity, you really need to protect your reputation. So make sure that you keep a good reputation. Yeah, jail time. Jail time is a definite consequence. Yes, I got court days off because a lot of the times I had to go all over the state, depending on where I was testifying. Yeah, that's a good point. And luckily, I didn't have to deal with suspect identifications, but we did everything from arson evidence to we did drug evidence, arson evidence. My least favorite were the urine kits and blood kits. But you know, we had to handle all sorts of possibly toxic things that were from all over the state. And so you had to get really good at knowing what to do. And after a while, you had to have that reputation. So just remember, good reputation is a huge part of this. Any comments? No, we're good. Okay. Oh, question? No.
I'm good.
Oh, and yeah, basically, you don't want to be the person that lives to be the bad example. You don't want to be the person that's like, hey, do you remember what so-and-so did? Or, you know, did you read that article about so-and-so? You don't want to be that person. You know, there's that joke that, you know, there are some people that live to be bad examples for everyone else. Don't be that person. Okay, lost trust. So being unethical can cause others to stop trusting you in pretty much every aspect of your life. At home, you can have parents that won't trust you if you lie to them or skip out on your chores. At school, your teachers won't trust you if you cheat or plagiarize. At work, your boss won't trust you if you spend a whole shift texting instead of helping customers. Although being unethical doesn't always mean breaking the law, sometimes unethical actions can have legal consequences. Parking in a handicap spot, even though you aren't handicapped, because you really want to be close to the entrance of a movie theater, definitely is not ethical. It's also illegal and can lead to some very hefty fines. And as a matter of fact, those fines do keep going up because it seems like people just don't care unless it's much more of a hit to their wallet. So this is what I was talking about with poor reputation. So if you make a habit of unethical behavior, this is when your reputation, people are like, I'm not going to trust you. But the biggest problem also for whoever you're with, your business or your school or other people around you, can also earn a bad reputation by associating with you. So remember, having an unethical pattern of behavior harms everyone around you. So sometimes if you have that pattern, finding employment, all sorts of things can be affected by it.
It was a huge thing, and so ethics is a huge thing in the Army because everyone knows someone that knows you. Doesn't really matter your career field because you get shifted around so much, and you can see, or especially nowadays with a lot of the soldiers and social media, LinkedIn, all that,
Yeah,
they can find
social
someone
media,
that was.
yes.
They can find someone that was at your last unit. They can find someone that's at your current unit before you go to your new unit, and they can find out what you're like. And yeah, it determines things real quick.
Yeah, and speaking of social media, I don't know if a lot of you are aware of this, but companies have started doing what's called social media scraping. And that's when they go out and, you know, because a lot of people don't have secure settings on their social media accounts. They will go out and they will basically just pull everything they can get their hands on before you hit the interview process. So, and even some colleges are doing that now for like the higher level colleges, and that can affect your like entrance exams and your job prospects. So if you have unethical online behavior, even like if you're just an epically bad online troll, like some people are, you know, just sitting behind the keyboard and doing this stuff does have consequences now.
They actually did that to me when right before I got pulled out to Iraq. I was with a Army Special Forces unit, and I had to go through an interview process. So that was Navy, and yeah, they pull up my Facebook. They had screenshots of my Facebook. They pull up some dude's YouTube account. I think it was mine. I corrected him; it wasn't mine. But anyway, so they pull up my Facebook. They pull up a guy's YouTube account. I think it was mine, and they also done a social media thing. I don't think it was Instagram because I didn't have Instagram at the time, but they had like 4 different things that they pulled up and it just to check on me, make sure I was actually divulging any kind of like
Absolutely.
OPSEC information and whatnot.
Yeah, and if you're doing anything with military, anything with top secret clearance, they basically have you sign that right away to that privacy. They, in order to have those clearances, they have the right, you sign, you know, all the paperwork and stuff, giving them the right to go and look at all that stuff in order for them to be like, okay, yes, we can trust this person. Even when I worked for the state police, I had to do a background check, and the questionnaire was, it looked like one of those reams of paper, and I was like, ha ha ha, you know, this isn't really the questionnaire, and they're like, yeah, it is. And it's like, oh, great. They interviewed all the people that I knew because they were worried about, hey, is this someone that can be bribed, you know, because I was dealing with court cases. And they also made me go through a polygraph, which was not fun. So, and that wasn't even a top clearance type job. So if you're in going to be going in the military, or being a contractor with the military or anything like that, this is one of those, you really want to protect your reputation. Unfortunately, this also, oh, go ahead.
So when I was applying for a security job at the courthouse, they did a background check on me and everything. There's actually 2 people that have the same first name, same date of birth, but since I have 2 last names, one had the one last name and the other person had my other last name.
Oh my gosh.
And they both had criminal records.
I bet you were like, no, that's not me.
Yeah, and I had to call the sheriffs, verify socials, and it's funny because
Oh,
they were
nice.
literally arrested like 2 days apart in completely different states too.
Well, at
And-
least that worked in your favor, because, you know, physically that would be a difficult task to pull off. you know?
Yeah, and like, you know, I had to go pull out my time cards from the last job showing like, hey, I was actually here. So
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I'm lucky enough that my name, if I was back east, there's a ton of Cashes that live back east, because that's where my dad's family comes from. But here, there's just not very many, so I was lucky on that. And my first name spelling combined with that, I was lucky. But I've heard all sorts of horror stories from people that, yeah, they had to run this and that because I had the same name as somebody who was on a no-fly list, or so. Make sure you keep detailed records on certain things, because if you ever have to, then you can have proof and go, no, this is not me.
I worked as a SEER instructor for the military for a little while as a contractor, and I used to pull with open source on our students. Didn't use any tools or anything, just dug on my own. And I used to find the funniest stuff, because you can get to their Venmos and just look up their names. And the guys in the classes together will send each other money for lunch or whatever, but they'll tag
The
it
weird
vulgarly with a
memos
bunch
and
of
stuff.
eggplant emojis and peach emojis. And I'd pull it up in an interrogation in front of the whole class, make them look
Embarrass
stupid.
the tar out of them.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. You will actually like some of the stuff where I talk about social engineering then, because I talk about all the things in later classes that you can get to with tools and without tools. So you'll be able to see some of the fun stuff that we can do then.
Don't worry, Colin, they deserved it. They were pilots.
Oh, they were SEAL students, but even better.
Yeah, you know what, they have to, in the military, they usually I found military people have a well-developed sense of humor, and if they don't, they have to learn how to have it. So okay, so
Or they get
that's-
out real quick.
yeah, that's the other part. Yeah, or they get hazed if they don't. Yeah, that I'm not for hazing, I'm not saying that, but I have seen that too.
Yeah. I learned real quick what jokes not to say in front of my family after coming home.
Yeah, there's some things that you don't want to repeat, that's for sure. Okay, so poor reputation. We just talked about that. And being the bad example. So one person behaving unethically can set an example for a whole group. This is especially true when the unethical person is in a leadership position. So if you know your boss is stealing office supplies from your job, you might be tempted to do the same. even though you know it's unethical. When one person is unethical, it can bring everyone down. So a lot of times you will see them in a corporate setting. They will frequently fire people, or depending on the corporation, sometimes they will fire an entire unit if they're worried about it. They're very big in certain corporate environments on all sorts of ethical things. I mean, if you're taking 1 or 2 things of sticky notes home, that's a little bit different than walking out the door with a printer. And believe me, I've actually seen that happen. So you got to remember that if you have one person in your group, they can bring everyone else down. So keep an eye on that person and see if they're really being unethical, or if they're just having an unethical moment, or if you just be aware. I fully believe in situational awareness, and I believe in checking out the rest of the people around you. I'm a people watcher too, so I just have a tendency to do that.
It wasn't my fault. I needed that printer to do my work at home, obviously.
And you know, it's funny now with a lot of the remote jobs, you probably can ask for it depending on the place you're working, and or you can get it and write it off on your taxes. Okay, so you remember me talking about this is a lot of black and white, but there are gray zones. So these are, and we'll see how good they are, examples of the gray zones. So one Saturday afternoon, you pick up a few new shirts at a major department store at the mall. Everything's on sale, and when you check out, your shirts are even cheaper than you thought they would be. But when you get home, you take a look at your receipt and realize the cashier forgot to charge you for one of the shirts. You're not sure what to do. On one hand, you know that keeping the shirt will cost the store and possibly the cashier money. But on the other hand, will a huge department store really notice one shirt? And you could use the extra money to save to order a pizza tonight. What should you do? Is it ethical to keep the shirt, or should you go back to the store and tell an employee what happened? Okay, so this is one of the ones I want to discuss with you guys. What are your personal, and there's no, I'm not grading on this, obviously. What are your personal thoughts on this? Should you keep the shirt and, you know, not tell them? Should you keep the shirt and tell them, hey, you know, you guys didn't charge me for this?
Well,
what do you guys think?
In my past experience, a majority of the times when I've noticed they haven't charged something, and I'll go back, they just do it for free.
I think a lot of the times they're like, oh, that's okay. And I think that knowing that that they didn't charge you, I guess it really depends on the store, but knowing that you're willing to do that, a lot of stores you start to get a good reputation with those stores for your honesty. But there are, and you have to think of this, there are some stores that have cameras, and if their cashiers are short, they will actually go back through the footage and look at things. So that is something to think about too. Okay, thoughts from anybody else? What do you think?
If it's a big department store, odds are they're probably going to take it out on the cashier. So I'd go back and just say, hey, I noticed this.
Yeah, and then what they decide to do at that point is on the store, not you or the cashier. Yeah, that's a good point. Anybody else?
You're already committed to buying it at that point too, so you should either return it or pay for it.
Right. Yeah, personally, I would go back, and this has happened to me before, especially if I've had them do weird things with big ticket items too, and mischarge or do things like that. And I always try to be like, okay, my mom during a period when I was younger worked as a cashier, and I saw how badly cashiers were treated. And a lot of times if they're short in their tills, they get it taken out of their paychecks. And so I never wanted to see that happen to somebody else. So a lot of the times I would make sure, hey, you know, this was just an accident. They were ringing up too fast, or I got talking to him and distracted and whatever. I didn't get to pay for this, but I have also had times when I've had to go in and be like, I did not buy 2 of these. I saw someone mention that, or
Well-
this is the wrong barcode, or
Yeah, well, from my experience, working in stores, like, cause I have, and I don't know, if bigger department stores do it, but like when I worked like at Radio Shack, Sears, like whenever there was a shortage, if it's under like $50, you just wrote it off and just kept on going.
Yeah, and it depends on, like, if it's a big box store, and it depends on who owns it. There's a lot of different factors for those too. And sometimes it depends on who the shift manager is too. Because sometimes you can get a shift manager that is just a real jerk, and they can use it as an excuse to go after somebody. So it's one of those gray zone items that it's loss prevention. Yes, that is an excellent, that would be an interesting area to work in. And I imagine loss prevention would be very all about all about everything we're talking about with ethics.
Question. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't really spend much time in iPhone stores, but how do you steal an iPhone? Like, aren't they always in the back room? And then they just have like the display that's got like the cable connecting it.
In boxes. They
Oh, like insider theft. Gotcha.
they should really have like some kind of security key on their like Intune or something. They could disable it if it gets stolen.
Well, like, cause like we had one time when I was working at Radio Shack, a manager who stole 15 iPhones. And since she was a manager, and
That's
she
not
was
just a
in charge of
little.
it.
That's
Yeah.
And now
yeah.
she's in prison.
And they found out like right before like their first bankruptcy, and and she already quit, and they had somebody coming in do inventories like we're missing so many phones, so they found out it was her.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Auditors, and I've done auditing of all sorts of like property, and then I also did forensic auditing. So that feeds greatly into the ethics problems too. You never know what's going to happen or how they're going to backtrack you. Because they're usually, when you're talking about products or things like that, a lot of the times there's multiple checks and balances, and you may not catch the person at first, but sometimes you'll catch him later on. So that's one of those, if you're gonna do that, make sure you think about the possibilities, Okay. And this just basically was what we just went through. Sorry. Okay, so this is just the actual principles of ethics that we're going to talk about here next on part B. So ethical principles help people make ethical decisions. So these include integrity, trust, accountability. You'll hear about that a lot in cybersecurity, as well as transparency, fairness, respect, rule of law, and viability. So integrity is acting with honesty in all situations. And this is what we kind of covered in there with getting a good reputation. That means, having integrity. And there are, if you go out and look at the slides, there are some links to different Forbes things. So if you want to go look at those, you can. So being trustworthy in your relationships, your teachers, coworkers, friends, and family is what they're talking about with trust. Accountability. Now, accountability is accepting responsibility for all of your decisions. It's what it means to be responsible and accountable in the workplace. Transparency, being truthful when you communicate. Now, I'm sure all of us have seen lack of transparency, so we know what the opposite of this is. In cybersecurity, you're going to see that there are special rules a lot of the times that are put in place for transparency, so that people can see what's happening on the back end of cybersecurity. You're going to see, in fact, you're seeing these happen more and more, especially when a lot of the cyber laws that are coming out are forcing transparency so that they can see what type of things people are doing for cybersecurity. Fairness, treating others the way you'd like to be treated. Now, this one is kind of dependent on the person. So I do usually go with I try to treat people like I would like to be treated, but I put an asterisk on that. Be aware of cultural differences, because some cultures, and this is something I learned when I worked at the university, some cultures like a lot of eye contact. Some cultures consider that incredibly aggressive. So remember, not everybody likes to be treated exactly the same way, but just remember that you have to have fairness, but just remember that fairness is kind of an arbitrary metric depending on the person. Respect. This is honoring the rights, freedoms, views, and property of others. Now, to me, respect is a huge thing. Respect is not automatically given for me, it is earned. So I try to respect the person as soon as I meet them, but the more that I interact with them, if they are not the type of person that is going to respect me, it's really difficult for me to feel that same reciprocation. So that's something that I've had to work on as well. But I will, I do have a baseline of respect that I keep at work, because there should be at least a baseline respect for work in order to keep everything civil. Rule of law, respecting the rules of laws in your city and country. Now, as we'll go over later on when we talk about rules and regulations, city, country, county, and state laws are all different, so be aware of them. Viability. So this is ensuring that your actions are helpful in the long term, not just the short term. And this is a real problem in America, at least from what I've seen, and within certain corporations. So it may be a great idea for the short term, but it may just absolutely destroy everything in the long term. So make sure that you look at how it's going to affect everything in the long term as well. Yep. Yeah, cough, Snowden, cough, exactly. And this is the viability one, is where I'd like to bring in the planned obsolescence that we've seen in trends for technology, which I know all of you have run into. I absolutely hate planned obsolescence when it comes to, okay, let's make sure that this thing cannot be fixed and that it will degrade within the time period for them to buy a new one. I hate that. So personally, I think that it's short-sighted, and it degrades people's beliefs in the corporation. And that's that. It helps in the short term for the money, but it in the long term makes them not trust you.
I mean, you got to admit though, especially with like cars, how they get it down like the moment within a few months of your warranty going out.
Yeah, like, phones and cars are two of the best examples.
It just makes you wonder how electric cars are going to be.
Yeah, it does worry me about like battery life and things like that, because a lot of the times I think because you can plan down for battery life. And I think a lot of that, if they don't set it up correctly for the long term, it could be an issue. So I do worry about that. But I think there's a lot of things with transportation that have been a problem worldwide, especially for long term.
For the electric cars, it makes me think of like the moment it's going to be a meme, and it's literally going to be like the dog in the room that's on fire, and
Right.
it's, oh, my warranty runs or just ran out. The
This is
room's
fine,
on fire.
fine.
This is fine.
Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, so this is just a discussion point here. So does anyone have an ethical issue? Doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't have to be personal. In fact, I prefer it wasn't personal, that you've faced recently, and how did you solve it?
I had one the other day. I was at the Pintle campus for school, and then I went to lunch at a little bistro nearby, and waited for my pickup for my kit, my computer kit that you sent out.
Mhm.
And I ate lunch and I left, and I almost left my card in the check. And
Oh,
I
geez.
I
Yeah.
left. I was like, oh, thank God I remembered my card. And I went to get the kit, and I got the kit, and I'm like, oh shoot, like I totally forgot to sign and tip. And the waiter was super nice, and I was being super friendly with him. I'm like, God, he really must think I'm a dick for that. So
Mhm.
I went back and I was like, oh, yeah, hey, I forgot to sign my card, and I left the tip. He was super appreciative of it, and I
Mhm.
couldn't live without doing that, because I would have felt really bad.
Yeah, and then if you go in there next time, how would that affect your service, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Well, I used to be in sales for home appliances for a little bit. And the biggest thing everybody was always doing is upsell no matter what. They don't care. I just
Yeah.
go up. And for me, I always thought that was wrong, because like people come in and say, this is what you want. They want. So I just, all right, this is all you want, the basics.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, I'll show them, yeah, you could go nicer. It is nicer. But, basic is basic and what you want. So here you go. And I
Yeah.
got slack. I got slack for that before.
Yeah, and what's funny is when I deal with salespeople, it irritates the crap out of me when they do that. Whereas if I get someone that was a salesman like you, I will ask for them by name if they do that, and they don't make me go through that. But don't you want to do this? So I think I like salesmen that do that. But there are sales corporations that they're like, no, you always have to push the upsell. You have to do this, and that is absolutely an excellent example of an ethical issue.
I used to work for a big blue and yellow brand, and their whole thing was pushing credit cards no matter what, and it was one of the reasons why I stopped working there. And yeah, there was multiple instances where it was just stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's really frustrating when it has to deal with your employment. Daniel?
Sorry about that. I was gonna say the last ethical dilemma I had was doing sprinkler repair work. I was like kind of running just a little fly by night sort of company, and I was running into constantly, there was a specific company that would charge the like 120 minimum, but like not do the work. I went to a guy who got basically scammed 3 times for me just to twist the actual sprinkler head, and like that was the entire job. So
Oh my gosh.
I told him like, hey man, I was here for 10 seconds. I'm not going to charge you 120. Like, don't
Mhm.
call them anymore. But on the flip side, I also did like the ethical business thing of not like undercutting other sprinkler repair operations. 'Cause you
Mhm.
talk shop at like Pipeco or whatever, and like the going rate was 60 and then 2-hour minimum, like for just a call out basically.
Mhm.
So just making sure that you don't screw
Cause
over other
problems with
people.
yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, and I've worked at lots of different places, but a lot of mine were like state places. Like I worked for Idaho State University, and then I also worked for originally it was AMI Semiconductor, then it was On Semiconductor, and I think it's been bought out and named something different now. And they had some really interesting ones that there was an interesting ethical dilemma because do you guys know what AMI Semiconductor is? First of all, do you know what or On Semiconductor is?
A place that makes semiconductors.
Yes, so they make the basic parts for them. Have you ever seen those silicone discs where they print out like the basic parts for the tops of the computer chips and stuff? So they'll put there's like multiple pieces for the chips on one disc. And so they had the small discs, which were about this big, and then the big ones, which were this big. And each fabrication unit, you had to wear like the clean suits and everything. I hated that. But each box in the fab unit that I was in held 25, and what each one of those discs, if you dropped that box, it was about $50,000 that you just destroyed. So if you dropped the box, or if you put it into the wrong machine, or if you did something wrong, there was a very good choice that you were at least going to get suspended, probably fired. So a lot of the times we saw people hiding the mistakes they made. Once when they were doing a fab clean, they found a whole box of them that someone had shoved up in the drop ceiling. So it was desperation for, I don't want to lose my job, versus is it ethical to tell them that I just broke something. So yeah, wafers. Yeah. So it was really interesting to work with, but when you're talking about an ethical dilemma that means you make one mistake and you lose your job, a lot of people choose job over ethics. So that's also something that's interesting to see how it works out in. Okay, so that's it for the slideshow on the ethics stuff today. Good discussion, everybody. Does anybody have any questions about anything for this week? Has everyone been able to get into Cisco? Oh, I did want to talk to you guys. Because of my back pain, I haven't been able to get your test done. I have two options. I can either get it out tomorrow, which will give you guys a really short amount of time to get your test done, or I can do a combined one that's week 1 and week 2. It won't be huge. It will be a shorter one. Which do you guys prefer? Do you want just the regular week 1, week 2, or do you want a combined one that wouldn't be due until the end of next week?
Wait, I'm sorry. What kind of tests are we talking about?
Like the weekly tests.
Okay.
I kind of, yeah, I was going for, so there's one split, there's some combined, combo. So it would not be, so when I'm talking about combo, I'm not talking about a massive test. It would be a small amount of questions. So it would be the same amount of questions you would get on a weekly test, because I'm not going to double your, the amount of them, because that's just not fair. But it would have the week 1 and 2 material in there. And I would still do you get multiple tries and that you can see everything like we did in the last class. So it looks like combo sounds good. Yes, looks like combo for most people.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
the majority. We'll do that. That's good.
Okay. And then I will get that out there, and it will be due by next Sunday. and it will have combined stuff. And I also found some sheets and study guides and things from my predecessor, and he just gave me a massive, like 5 terabytes worth of data from all his teaching history. So I've been going through and trying to find all of the stuff that you guys could use. And I found a bunch of like, oh, sorry, this is my very ill-timed orange cat. And so I'm gonna put out like some, in the document section, I'll put out some section on cheat sheets and things like that for you guys that you can use for this class and next class. And then I'll also include them in next class as well. But it's just, you've got a bunch of stuff out there on like command line tables and IP tables and all sorts of stuff that would just be really easy for you guys to look at and digest the information. So I'll get that out for you guys too. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, he either hit the mic, or if you look at this little thing I have, it's got a button that you can mute with, and he's 14, so he's very stubborn. No matter how many times I've tried to tell him, no, don't get up now, he's like, so yeah, he's my stubborn old man, Kitty. So, but yeah, so you're going to see some over this weekend, you're going to see a bunch of stuff pop up in the documents section, and it's just going to have, there's going to be some PowerPoints, and there's one that's like a PowerPoint with extra slide decks for tables and cheat sheets and PDFs and things like that. So I will let you guys, I'll announce it out on Discord when I get those published, and let you guys know. And the videos, because my main computer is the one where I have everything set up on, they might not be up until tomorrow. So just be aware of that. And if there are any questions, Discord and email, I've got them both on my phone and on my laptop. And I've got more access on Cisco for everything now too. And I got a bunch more Cisco PowerPoints and things to help with that as well. So hit me up if you guys have any questions. I'm going out to look for more stuff to help with the CERT, the second CERT retake exam. Right now, it's been very difficult to find really good information for you guys. So if you guys happen to find anything, just share it on that Discord channel, and we'll get there and see what we can do. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
basically the only thing I found for the cert retake is Quizlets. Everything else is sketchy or pay to play.
Yeah, that's the problem. So Quizlets, you found some good stuff?
Yeah, I think I linked one of them so far.
Yeah, I think I
and
saw
then
one out on
I
Discord
also-
from you.
And then I linked Messer's YouTube video.
Yes, I cannot
he's-
recommend
'cause it's a-
Messer enough. I actually used him for my certified ethical hacker and for my computer hacking forensic investigator certs. So he's really good.
Yeah, so a lot of his stuff is higher level than what we're currently doing.
Mhm.
But if you're going through the videos, it's a lot more in depth into it, but you can still get something out of it. But yeah, like I'm on his YouTube right now, and he's got like
It's really good.
200-ish videos or something ridiculous, and he's got a ton for the Network Plus we're doing right now, and then for the A Plus that we just did, all his stuff seems to be for the 200 level instead of the 100, and I can't seem to find anyone that's doing 100 level stuff.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing with the smaller certs is that they're not as well known. So trying to find ones that are not paid for content has been kind of difficult. So I'm still digging through Troy's backlog to see if I can find you guys anything else. And if I have anything else, we'll throw it out there for you. He has a lot of little PDFs and things that are hidden in subfolders that I'm still finding. So as I go through, I will update more. But yeah, that's all I have.
Once again,
I'm sorry, what?
either way, once again, thanks for going above and beyond to help us.
Hey, I try. I just want to make sure you guys get that cert. It's not fair. I'm glad that we got you guys a second retake though. That I was really happy that they had enough for that. So
Yeah, that's a good deal.
yep. So okay, so that's it for tonight. Let me hit stop on the